Hi, good morning. So, what I want to talk about today is this occult tool. Now, this is divination tool. It's within the Dowsing family, and it is in Norway. It is called a bouncing rod. I'm not completely sure what it's called in English. I have heard it being called a divining rod, a single dowsing rod, and by several names actually. But I generally call it a bouncing rod because that's what it's called in Norway, and that is actually what it does. It bounces. So, how do you use this? Well, you can see that this is sort of like if a set of dowsing rods and a pendulum had a baby, it would be something like this. And basically, you hold it, you just have to push the camera a bit back, you hold it in one hand, as you would a pendulum, and you ask your questions. So, for example, can I have a yes? Can I have a no? Can I have a maybe? Can I have a yes? Well, you get the point. Thank you. And as such, it works very much like a pendulum. You can use it to get yes, no, maybe, and wrong answer. That's at least what I do with my pendulum. And it will swing very much like a pendulum. For me, it will swing around for yes, and it will swing sideways. And it will swing up and down for no, and sideways for wrong asked question, and at the slant for maybe. But this will vary from person to person and from the between the various bouncing rods. And just like a pendulum, you should, when you initiate a new rod, you should ask it what the various answers are, and you should actually ask this now and again, because it may change. Now, what is this tool used for? Well, it can be used for several things. It is more practical to walk with than a regular pendulum. So it is more easy to use to find water, find objects, find a hidden person, and so on, than a pendulum, which will be much more affected by your steps. And as such, it has more of the functions of a divining rod, while at the same time it has the movements of a pendulum. It can also be used like you would a E-shaped wishing rod, because you can go with it and it will can have that downward motion that you can get with the typical wishing rod. So yeah, this is one of my favorite dowsing tools. I really like it. Now, what should you look for when you buy this? Well, the first ones I got were made of plastic and wood beads, and I didn't last very long, because that up and down motion, it wreaks havoc on the rod. So I used them up. I usually bought them at a psychic fair that came around once a year, and I used them up, and then I stopped selling them at that psychic fair, and I was a bit in a panic to get a new one. So I took an old fishing rod, which actually was my fishing rod when I was a little girl, so it's pretty pretty short, and I just cut it so that I hold it from the thin edge, and the thicker edge would bounce, and that was made of glass fiber. I still have that, but it's very large, and that end of it is very heavy, and since I have a cat that tends to be fascinated by moving things, I was always afraid that the heavy end of that fishing rod would just bounce down and hit her. So I found this on eBay, and I am very happy with it because it is metal. This is metal wire, and it has a copper handle and a copper end. Now I have since then found another dowsing rod on eBay, and it works better because it also have wire here, a copper handle and a copper end, but the end is round, so that this is my only problem with this. There's a hole in it, while the other one is cylindrical, I mean. And I think that these are more sensitive than pendulums to being somewhat balanced. So yeah, I would recommend you get a metal one with a sort of sturdy, but not too rigid, rod part. The handle can be made of anything, but I would have a somewhat balanced weight in the end. Now, can you make these? I haven't tried, but I am planning to. So I will probably do a tutorial once I have figured it out, but it shouldn't be too difficult. What you would need is somewhat thick metal wire. It should be so thick that it won't bend out of shape if you do this, but it has to be thin enough to be flexible. And what I'm thinking about doing is just making the handle out of beads which are thick enough to fit onto that, but not too much thicker, and just glue them into place. And then either make just the same type of beads for the weight, or make a polymer clay weight. So yeah, you should be able to make these yourself. And as I said, you can also use an old fishing rod and anything really that will give you that bounce. So yeah, and a word of warning, like I said, be careful around pets and small children, because now this isn't a problem, because this is so flexible that even if I try to hit my hand with this, it doesn't hurt, because it doesn't get that force. But with something more stiff like a fishing rod, that'll come down pretty hard, so be somewhat careful. Now, how do you use it? Well, like I said with my basic pendulum 101 video a while ago, you do it the same way. You hold it, you just focus and concentrate, and then you ask it to show you a yes. So, can I have a yes? And then you ask it for a no, and you do a couple of repetitions of that. This is a basic exercise that you can do once a day or somewhat regularly to get used to the tool. Then you ask it, can I have a maybe? And a wrong asked question. Now, the reasons why the maybe and wrong asked questions are important is that there are a lot of questions that can't be directly answered by yes and no. Now, this is difficult to get in dowsing, but at least you can get sort of. So if you ask, will it rain today, and there will be some it rain, but for most of the day it will be sunny. You might get a maybe answer. A wrong asked question means basically it can mean directly you have asked this question wrong because you have asked a question that the pendulum are not able to answer, or something that isn't a yes or no answer. But it can also mean I can't answer this at this time, you're not ready for the answer, or in some way. So if you get a lot of wrong asked question, I would try to rephrase the question a couple of times. If you continue to get that answer, I would recommend you meditate on it and then try again at another time, because it might be that you're just not ready for the answer right then and there, or the pendulum aren't willing, or you don't have access to the answer. Now, just like with the pendulum, we recommend that you also in these exercises ask a few questions that you know the answer to. This will help you get used to getting yes and no answers. So for example, I might ask, is the sky blue? And as you see, I get a yes. I might ask, is the sky green? And I get a no. I might ask, am I a girl? And I get a yes. And I might ask, am I a boy? And I get a no. So I recommend that you just add a few of those in your daily exercise. And I do think that the bouncing rod, while it's pretty overlooked by a lot of occultists, is a very useful tool because it offers the mobility of the dowsing rods and the flexibility of a pendulum. So it's in many ways the best of both worlds. So yeah, and as with all occult tools, when you have used it, I recommend that you thank it. Thank you. And of course, using an occult tool, it will eventually get attuned to you, and it will be more powerful for you if you treat it with respect and use it fairly regularly. So here's a close-up look. It's really just a metal thingy with a flexible rod and a weight in the end. As easy as that. So yes, that was my little video on the basics of the bouncing rod. I hope you have enjoyed the video, and blessed be.